Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Professional Development with the Salt Lake Chamber. We are really excited to have everyone here this morning. We're in for a treat today. We have Mike Bryan, the CEO of Penna, speaking to us today about professional development or your business beyond COVID-19. What did you learn and where will it take you? Because I think we have all learned a lot of different things during this pandemic, and now it's time to start applying what we've learned. So we're thrilled to have Mike with us today. And Mike, if you're ready, we'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Maria. It's so good to be here again with everybody. Those of you that were here last time, we may snap across the top of a couple of the topics we talked about last time, but really quickly as a part of an introduction, Penna Powers is a 38-year marketing communication advertising agency located in Salt Lake City, work across the Intermountain West. We work on client B2C, B2B, nonprofit, and in the government sector quite a bit. We kind of hang our hat on the behavior change technology and strategies. We focus a lot on controlling people, helping people modify and control their behaviors and choices that they're making. And it's interesting because it gives us an opportunity to work on a lot of very unique projects, helping people make better decisions to increase their quality of life and to help protect themselves. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But as we get going through this, I want to talk a little bit about what happened. And we're not getting into explaining what COVID was. You all know that. But one of the interesting things that came out of the research that I've done on this is how many companies do you think were ready for this? How many companies do you think were like, okay, if we have a pandemic, we've got a plan. We'll pull out file number 15, tear the top of it, and we'll go into our COVID plan or our pandemic plan. So most people didn't have that. In fact, in the research that I found, 75% of small business owners now say they will have a plan, okay? Companies say that they're going to be more ready because they were not ready for this, and it caught them by surprise. We've had things happen in our recent history that tripped us up a little bit, that kind of caught us without being prepared. And so I don't know that it's a function of you going out and creating a full-on strategic plan for a pandemic. I don't know that it requires something like that. But I do think it's important that you start thinking about the things that you wish you would have done. Okay, the things that you wish you would have done when this happened. Because I know for our company, when this happened, we looked at each other like deer in the headlights, like, oh my gosh, what do we do? How do we handle this? What do we need to do now? And we started kind of just damage controlling instead of saying, okay, to protect these parts of our business, these are the things that we need to do right now. So it might be a good idea for you to get yourself or get your management team or some of your staff together and say, okay, now that we've gone through this, what would we do differently? What would we do faster? How could we adapt quicker to protect ourselves a little bit better? And some of the things that we'll talk about today are things that some companies are just going to make a part of their actual business model now that they learned doing that during that COVID time. The other thing that was really interesting was Zoom, right? All of a sudden, we had this Zoom thing. And the question that I went to this Pew Research Center to find out, are people sick of Zoom? Now, some of you may say that you are, that you're tired of it. I got to tell you, and I talked a little bit about this last time, I'm 80% deaf. I have hearing aids in both ears, and I've been this way for nearly 20 years. And I learned how to hear with my eyes for about half of that time because they couldn't do hearing aids that would actually help me. And so I read lips, maybe more than I actually hear. So when COVID hit and everybody put a mask on, I went instantly deaf again. And it was unbelievably frustrating. I didn't think it was going to be as impactful as it actually was. I found it difficult to go anywhere. I mean, you imagine like going to a drive-up window when they come on the microphone and they go, that's how I hear all the time. And so when they're at a window behind a piece of plexiglass with a mask on, they might as well be speaking a foreign language. Well, this research showed that teleworkers that use online tools, at least some of the time, thought that 35% of them thought that it was not a very good substitute for an in-person meeting. But 65% of them thought it was actually a great solution without COVID, okay? Teleworkers that were using it often, they were a little bit worn out by it. 37% of them were worn out by them. These are people that do it a lot, but 63% were actually fine with it. Now, one of the things that's interesting with this with this whole Zoom thing as it came into play was a lot of weird things started happening in meetings. And I'll give you an example. I'm a member of the Mountain West chapter of the National Speakers Association, and we were in a meeting where there was a presenter, but we could see everybody. It was a meeting. It wasn't a webinar like this, and we could see each other. And while this person was presenting, I'm going to leave this person's name anonymous. I'll use a different name. But one of the people, it was a lady, she was eating. It was during a lunch, and so she was eating. Lots of people were eating. It wasn't that big of a deal. But when she got done with her cottage cheese or yogurt, whatever it was, she picked the bowl up and licked it out. Now, I know everybody in that room was looking at her because you could see facial expressions that were like, people started pulling these funny faces, right? I was just tickled with it because I love, funky stuff like that just make me laugh. Well, she went and filled the bowl up again, ate it again, and licked it out again. And it was like captivating for me. I know everybody in that room was watching her and not the presenter. Then the unbelievable thing happened. She picked up her laptop and started walking. And I thought, no, this isn't going to happen. She went right in the bathroom, sat it down on the counter, and proceeded. But fortunately, it just showed her upper body. And I was typing as fast as I can. Everyone can see you. You left your camera on. And I hoped that I could see something funny like this in a Zoom room. But I think you can think about the things that have happened. So many funny things have happened in this. So I kind of use the moments that happened during this pandemic where we were using this Zoom thing. I actually really enjoy it. In fact, for me, especially during the pandemic, I would rather have a meeting in Zoom than in person because I can see everyone's mouth move. I can see everybody. And it really helps me because when people are talking, I can actually see them. And, the funny things that came out of the Zoom thing, like, oh, you're still on mute, and people, we had our videographer build a video that he made his background, and he had himself walk in and put a drink down in front of him and walk out. It was hilarious. And little things like that just made working in the Zoom environment kind of fun. Now, was a little distracting. You've seen people in meetings that are distracting. I have a son-in-law who is up in Billings, Montana, that his back started to hurt. So his wife bought him one of those ball chairs, one of the chairs that are a ball. And he got a message from his boss after a meeting, because they meet virtually. He's working from home. And she said, you have to stop bouncing on your ball while we're in a Zoom meeting. He literally was doing this during the entire meeting and didn't even realize he was doing it. So some of these funny things we're learning and we're getting better at it. But look at some of this research. It's really interesting to see. Working from home, companies have to start addressing this. Pre-pandemic, about 20% of people that they interviewed worked from home. Not maybe full-time, some full-time, but not maybe full-time. But during the pandemic, over 70% of people that they interviewed were actually working at least some days during the week at home. Now, we experienced that as well. And it was kind of interesting that in the middle of this pandemic, we had employees going to their managers saying, hey, when this is all over, can we still work from home? And I'm going to talk a little bit during one of our case study discussions about how our company did some pivoting to make this work, but we actually we put in place a policy that managers and employees could work out an agreement to work a couple days from home if it was practical. And sometimes it's not practical, depending on what your business model is. But It is something you may want to address now that you have figured out how to do it very well. But my advice would be to actually set up a policy. Set up some kind of policy so that you don't have people doing it in some really rogue way that's not what you were expecting to do. Okay, so now where do we go from here? Now that we're here, in the last presentation, we talked a lot about what was happening to our economy, what it did to our economy. So today we're going to focus on some case studies. I'm going to talk through 4 specific case studies, and I'm going to interview 2 companies that are local that and talk a little bit about what they did, how they handled it, how it impacted them. One's an entrepreneur, individual, sole proprietor that is in the speaking business, and another one is Quinn Deetline from Hill Center Theater. We'll interview both of them as we go through this. Okay. Now, some of these companies did some incredibly innovative things. Some of them were like crazy innovative. Some of them were not that innovative, but they just had to do something. Okay. So the first one that I want to talk about that was really interesting is a client of ours, and that's Harman grocery stores. So during the pandemic, they had they map out their stores on a physical map where they can see where competitors are, right? And in the grocery store business, convenience is a major player. And we're going to talk about that moving into the future because convenience has now changed dramatically in our world. Okay, so in a 3-block radius of where they were, they had a competitive store that was shutting down. And so when that happens, there's an immediate opportunity to grab market share. Okay, so when we started doing research and strategy to figure out what would be the right thing to do in this situation, we conducted some research and found out that if a shopper uses an in-store pharmacy of a grocery store, they're more likely to do majority of their shopping at that store. It's interesting, the research on grocery stores, some people will buy one thing from one store and other things from another. They've just got these funny, weird, quirky things that they do. And so we found that these people, we had an opportunity to snag market share by going after a very tight demographic audience. So here's some of the things that we did to make this work. First thing we did was social media geo-targeting. We put up a geofence, okay? And in that geofence, we set up social media marketing tools like this, where we offered $25 credit on their foodie club, their Harman's membership club card, if they transferred or did a new prescription at their store. Now, this was at this specific store. To give 25 credits to the entire population would have been really cost prohibitive. So this was targeted in literally a 3 or 4 block radius where these people could get to this store specifically, because that's what they were trying to do. Well, in order for this to work, right after this social media started running, in that same geographic fence, they sent a direct mail piece. That direct mail piece matched identically the campaign that was running in social media about the $25 towards the foodie club. Okay. Now, the interesting thing was, not a week after this direct mail piece went out, they sent out another direct mail piece to explain what is the foodie club. So this talked about the things that the club does, why that prescription, the offer was still there, but it talked about you can see over here, a few of the things that foodie club provides. And it's a relatively new program, so they needed to do some education with it. But if you think about it, that is 3 medium touch points that they've talked about it. They also put this on their website to make sure that the people in that geo-target knew that that store was offering that deal. The address was important in this one because it wasn't available in other stores. It was available in this store. Now, later we found that it worked so successfully that they offered that to most of their stores that had pharmacies in them to bring people into those stores where they could get that credit and grow that clientele. It's interesting how a little bit of research gave them some intelligence about how their audience behaves. And that is what made the change in how they were going to do that. So we talked a little bit about this last time, their eShopper program took off. Their call in and their web-based shopping store tools, their offerings went berserk. And I've talked to so many people that say, now that I've been used to it, I don't know that I can go back. That is a function of convenience. And we're going to talk about that in the marketing section at the end, where I'm going to go through 4 different categories to give you ideas of how you can do new things with what we've learned moving forward to grow your business. Here's another interesting case study. This is the Treehouse Athletic Club. Now, obviously, when gyms got hit hard, because there's so much physical contact and there's a lot of contact when it comes to gyms, people touching things, right? And so when the pandemic shut them down, the Treehouse Athletic Club pivoted really fast to Zoom fitness. So they went after it hard and set up all of their group classes on Zoom and got them out to their current membership base. Now, when it started to reopen and the pandemic started to ease off and people started coming back, they didn't come back as fast as they thought they would. And that was a little bit frustrating for them. So they decided that they were going to go ahead and continue to offer these online classes, but they needed to do something to get their attendance back up. They needed to do something. And now I don't know how many of you are gym people, but gyms are really interesting because they want you to have a membership. They want you to want to come, but not everybody at the same time. So there's this really delicate balance of keeping those doors open and the equipment available for people that are coming. So everybody couldn't come at 7 a.m. at the same time or they'd have a serious problem. So it's kind of a dance that they have to do. But what they were experiencing is the attendance numbers were really, really low. People were really hesitant to come back. So they created an incentive campaign. Now, also, you got to remember, one of the big fears of a gym is, like we said earlier, when something like this happens, people will go into panic mode and they'll start changing gyms. And so a lot of the gyms are going to start marketing hard, trying to pick up clientele when people start dropping their memberships. Remember, the key thing in this is the geofence of the location that people will be coming to that gym. If you've got a competitor within that 2-mile fence, you're going to have people trying to get your clients. So you have to get on the move. So think about where if your clients are affected by geography, think about where that is. You got to think about what that location is and make sure that you're watching your competitors, that they're not going to be starting to cherry pick some of your market share, because that's what will happen. This company, Treehouse, specifically put together a program. They put together a bingo program. And this bingo program was really interesting because it was a month-long program where you would do specific things and put a thing on your bingo. You could mark it off. People that got bingo would get t-shirts and water bottles and et cetera and stuff like that. If you got a blackout, you actually got 50% off a month dues of your monthly fee for a blackout. And some of the squares, they were trying a new class. They were coming in every day for a week. They were getting an extra hour of sleep, that you were kind of on an honor system to do this. But the concept here was trying to engage them, keep them engaged with the gym so that they felt like there was a reward, okay? And then they gave them specific prizes. This is super smart. They gave them specific squares if they shared the gym on their social media. So they gave them things to put in their social media. They gave them bios of some of their instructors, information about their classes that they like. And so these people would go back and in kind of a small way, they use these gym members as influencers. Super smart idea. You have to be careful with it. You can't have your clients start feeling like you're leveraging them without them feeling good about it. You got to be careful to make sure that you're not prostituting them, because if you start pushing them to do this, you're going to get some resistance and they may actually push away. The other thing they put together was a referral program. This is also super delicate. You got to be careful with it. But their program was a really good idea, and it was gentle. So if you brought a friend in, when you brought a friend in, and that friend joined, the two of you would get 50% off 1 month of your membership for someone in and them actually joining. So it was a good idea to join with somebody because both of you got a discount. Plus, They also know that if people come to the gym with friends, they come more often. They'll stay as a client. They don't want to leave as much if they have friends at the gym. It's kind of interesting because so many of these social factors take a place in a gym environment. Because if there are people there that are my friends, I don't want to not go there. So that stops you from being cherry picked and market share, switching your market share. Another thing they did that was really interesting, and this again plays into that relationship, they started this membership appreciation day. So during this day, they gave out granola bars and fruit and water bottles and all kinds of things for people that would come in during these special member appreciation days. The other thing that's really important that they work with their staff on, and instead of sometimes when you go into a business that you frequent, it's just to do business, right? So you go in and it's like, what do you have? Or it's welcome to the gym. There's your towel, whatever they do. They realized that every single person on their staff, didn't matter what their job was a client service representative. So they just motivated them hard to appreciate their members, to say hi to them, to welcome them, to cultivate a relationship with them, to be their friend. They taught their trainers, you need to do this delicately so they don't feel like you're trying to sell them something that they don't want. Still be friendly, still be nice, cultivate relationships so they feel like this is a friendly place for them to be. That relationship was super important in keeping people coming. Trying to find ways to tie their clients together was important in client retention. So some of these things that'll keep going is they'll continue to do online programs. One of the former employees of ours works at this place, and she does an online HIIT class. That's her thing. She's got a family. She can't leave them. So she now does these online classes for them that their members take advantage of. Super good idea. One of the pivots of today that we can do now, and we can do elegantly as these tools that we have are getting better and better and better. Okay. So what I'd like to do now is I would like to introduce our first person that I'm going to interview. And this person's name is Rob Ferre. And just really quickly, I'll let him introduce himself a little bit, but I got to know Rob a few years ago when I joined the local chapter of the National Speakers Association. Rob was just recently, last year, he was the president of our local chapter. And this guy is nimble, and he is aggressive, and he's super smart, and he took advantage of the pandemic like nobody. He really did an amazing job. And as I watched people during this pandemic literally shut their businesses down, Rob took advantage of it. So I'm going to go ahead, Rob, introduce yourself, and then we'll go through a couple questions.
Why, hello. Welcome to Cribs Virtual Studio Edition. My name is Rob Ferre. I'm a speaker, I'm an MC, I'm a game show host, and I'm a DJ. And what I love to do is I love to be in front of audiences. But things have evolved. We can't be in front of the audiences like we used to be. So what do? We got to take things virtual. So I got my virtual crib upstairs. Do you guys want to check it out? Let's go inside. Okay, right behind this door, this is where the magic happens. Let's go check it out. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome.
And here I am. All right, that was just a quick preview of my little virtual crib. That was a promotional video that I put together about a year ago. And so I thought that'd be fun to kind of give context to what we're doing here. Disco ball, no. Yes, and I did change my outfit. It has been a year. But yeah, that's a little video that I made about a year ago promoting my virtual studio. And what was interesting about the pandemic, I saw a lot of people pivoting, and I saw a lot of people sitting on their hands, and I saw a lot of people saying it's not going to last that long. And so seeing how things were trending and looking at what my other friends are doing, particularly Clint Pulver and Jason Hewlett, who are also here in Utah, they decided to go all in, and they decided to create their own virtual studio as well. And I decided, you know what, I got to do that. Because if this is going to be as bad as they say it's going to be, then I'm going to be at home a lot. And it was actually something I wanted to do, and this actually forced that. And it was interesting because I was able to create this. I had to do a lot of free events, but because of that, I had top of mind awareness, and I was able to start doing virtual events for people all over the world. I reached out to past clients. I started working with my association, as you previously mentioned, with the National Speakers Association, but I got to do all these cool events, and then I got an agent, and then I was working harder than I had ever done in my entire life. And so it was a lot of fun to being able just to start connecting with new people from around the world and doing these game shows. I was emceeing events, and I still am. You know, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be emceeing a couple of virtual events for the state of Washington and Oregon, and I'm doing an association event for them. And I do all these different association events and game shows, and it's just a lot of fun being able to work from home.
Now, Rob,
One other thing. Yeah, go ahead.
When this started, Rob, it was interesting to watch you because I remember really early on, all of a sudden I saw you out in a neighborhood, and people were literally on their lawns all around this neighborhood. Yeah. And the news actually got wind of this. And here Rob is with his Mickey Disney hands on. You did these, you just drove around and would do these, right? These weren't people paying for you. This is how you got some exposure and helped the community.
Yeah, so if you're watching the video right here, this is what I called the Doorstep DJ. And this was actually my first pivot. You know, there were a couple of different pivots. One was the virtual studio, and this was my first one. And what I would do is I go to these neighborhoods and I would do these dance parties. And the reason being is I wanted to connect with my community. I in addition to being MC, game show host, I also DJ. And all those DJing events went away. And so I thought, why not go to where the people are, which is at their homes. And so I went to these different neighborhoods, and it was a free service. I didn't charge a fee. I only took tips, and I said, hey, if you want to send me a Venmo or whatever, I'm happy to do that. And so what I did is I went to these different neighborhoods, and I started with my assistant's neighborhood. And I said, what do you think about this idea? Why don't we do a beta test in your neighborhood? She said, yes, let's do it. And then they invited the news. I didn't know they did. And we got on the news, but that was on Fox 13. And then another time I actually invited KSL to cover it as well. And that actually helped, get the word out. But what I really wanted to do, I think I started with the why. I needed to get out of the house. I needed to connect with my community, and I wanted to help people. I wanted people to be able to check out of their lives, because that was like in the thick of it in April, like March, April, when everybody was at home quarantined and
Right.
They had kids.
Right.
What am I going to do with all these kids, all this pent up energy? So that's what my first pivot was to go to those neighborhoods.
Yeah. And, it was interesting. And Rob and I both saw this very, very intimately because we were involved in this. The public speaking, every aspect of the public speaking industry stopped on a dime. I mean, Rob talked about a couple, Jason Hewlett and Ty Bennett and Clint Pulver. These guys do 100, sometimes 100 of these events a year. And in the space of a week, they went to zero.
Yeah.
Literally, in the space of a week, their entire business disappeared. And it was so awesome to watch you flip that on its ear when other people, and I talked to some of these speakers, were literally curled up in a ball in the basement with a blanket around them thinking, what am I going to do? And he's right.
Yeah.
He talked about how Clint and Jason quickly got people that knew technology. I got to tell you, I know a lot of people spent a boatload of money trying to figure out how to do this. The smart people found technology people to come in and help them. And Rob, you and I investigated different things. We bought different things. One of the cool things, and look at what Rob did here. You can't see my microphone, but Rob's microphone is a part of his personality. That's what he does. So a great microphone on the screen really helps. So Rob, when you started seeing an opportunity for these free things to turn into actual business, how did this affect your business model?
Yeah, I mean, business model was completely thrown out the door, right? And trying to figure out how to take what I do and build something new, right? And so one was the social distancing dance parties. But to me, that really wasn't part of the business. That wasn't made as a moneymaker. It was part of it as a top of mind awareness. I talk a lot about this. What is my brand? What is it that I do? And I know we have Quinn coming on a little bit later on, but he and his family, they went around door to door, and they had a family band, and they would go from door to door in daybreak and just start playing music. And so that was part of his brand. My brand is being able to connect with my community as an entertainer, right? And so I did these social distancing dance parties. But then I created a new model, which was these virtual events. And what really helped me was I collaborated with another speaker. And I think this is something that we should all think about is who can we collaborate? Who are people that we trust to maybe even create something new, right? And so this other speaker put on a virtual summit. I said, why don't I help you? And he said, yes. And so what we did is I was his virtual producer, MC, and that was the first event that I did of its kind. That exposed me to a whole variety of people and event planners. And these event planners were a part of association events that had all been canceled. So they hired me as a virtual event producer. And I had never done that, but when I produced other events that were free, I was able to do that without the stakes being high, if that makes sense. And I was able just to start getting my hours in doing the Zoom thing. And like, you can't see it right now, but my Zoom's right here, my slides are right here, my sound effects are right here. There's my sound effect. And right. And so I started putting all these elements together when I was doing these free non-paid events. And then I created a new model, right? I still used the skill set that I had was as an MC, but then I became a virtual event producer. So I created a new job for myself. And then I started have to market, because that's one of the hardest things also is when you're self-employed, you have to be your own marketing person. You have to put the word out there. But I just tried to do as many events as possible. And then I became top of mind for my friends, my network, people within my LinkedIn community, people within the NSA community, people within the DJ community. That was the other cool thing. DJs were like, I don't do this, but I know a guy. I got so many gigs from my fellow DJs who were like, yeah, I'm not doing the whole virtual thing. It's just not for me. I'm not going to do it. I know you do it. And so I am now doing a reoccurring event with Stanford University every other month, doing a game show for them. And that was because of another DJ who used to do live events for them. So I think that's one of the most important things is start with your network. Start with the people that you associate with. Start with the people in the chamber. Start with people that you want to collaborate with, and what can you create, and what can be new, and what can be possible.
That's great. That's great. And this was all new. I mean, the concept of an ATEM, a video HDMI switcher, or any of these tools were like, I mean, when this first happened, trying to get your hands on one of those was like trying to buy some exotic drug out of Bangladesh. It was next to impossible to get your hands on. So did you try anything over that year that kind of backfired on you? Was there anything that you tried that just didn't work out like you thought, that you had to pivot away from?
Yeah, here's the interesting thing about the Doorstep DJ. I thought, okay, this will go on for a long time. And then the demand went down because summer started rolling around. People started emerging from their homes. And so you got to figure out, you got to go to where the people are. And so nothing really backfired. I just thought, okay, I'm going to keep doing these events and it's going to grow, right? I had a friend in California. He did these dance parties as well in his market, right? And we would talk about it frequently. He did over 100. I did probably around 30, right? And he just kept going. So here's the thing is you have to adapt to your market. What are people wanting? What are people needing, right? But sometimes people don't know what they don't know, right? And you got to give them that opportunity of a product, of something that they need now. And so I didn't really see anything backfire. I mean, there was plenty of times where I did a virtual event and I did a game or I did some sort of activity that didn't work at all. And so I'm constantly evolving, constantly trying to figure out what works, what doesn't, and what people are going to pay for. Because in the end, I need to get paid for this. This is going to be my livelihood. So that's one of the most important things is constantly evolving and becoming better and adding to your product.
Right. Okay, let me ask this one in two steps, because I would really be interested, because one of the things that's interesting is when you're actually a presenter in this environment, what were some of the things that you had to adapt to when it comes to being in front of a camera as opposed to being in front of an audience with 1,000 eyes and you only have one eye? And then after you get done with that one, how did the pandemic impact your vision of what your future business might look like? What piece of this are you going to hang on to moving forward? First of all, what did you have to get used to with the gear?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's really different how virtual is different than live, right? In some regards, I love virtual as opposed to live. And one of the reasons is I can't see any of you. There's 27 people on this webinar right now. I can't see any of you. I can't see you on your phones. I can't see your judgmental faces. I'm not saying you're judging me at this time, but sometimes that's intimidating, right? But I can just speak into the void, as I call it. You know, it's like I'm just speaking into this camera, and I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. Some of you are going to be like, I resonate with this. Some of you are probably in your emails right now, right? But one of the cool things that I was able also to do, the chat, right? The chat function. Do we have the chat up right now? So I'm going to go ahead, open up the chat. Nobody's actually said anything in the chat right now. If you are alive, type yes in the chat. Now that's really cool for me because now we're getting people's inner thoughts. Lynn is alive. Thank you, Lynn. Okay. And Lynn just said to the panelists, Quinn is alive. Christine Romero, Mackenzie, Jamie, they're only sending this to the panelists, so not everybody can see that they're alive. But what is interesting to me is being now to see people's inner thoughts in the chat. Like, we don't do that during live events. We're like, go ahead and type in the chat if you're alive, right? Or what are your thoughts on the pandemic? What was the one thing that you missed during the pandemic? Go ahead, type that in the chat. And when you do type that, type it to panelists and attendees so everybody can see that. I'm actually asking you to do that. That's one of the coolest things is now I'm interacting with people and I can see their names. Whereas at a live event, you could be wearing a name tag. But for example, Mackenzie Coker says she missed hugs, right? And if that was a live event, she'd raise her hand. She'd be like, I missed hugs. What'd you say, Mackenzie? I didn't even know what her name was, right? Christine says seeing smiles. Jamie says shopping and going to lunch with friends. Personal interactions and conversations, right? You don't get this type of feedback at a live event. And so what I had to do is I embraced the chat. I love the chat. I love knowing people's names. I love being able to say, okay, Lynn, great. I love that you were able to say that. And now my audience feels more engaged. They feel heard. They feel spoken to, right? And it's just so cool to know that Quinn is actually listening and he's behind the scenes. He might be at the studio right now, the theater, wherever he may be, but it's cool to know that he's actually there. I can't see him, but I know he's there, right? And so that's one of the things that I've really embraced about this. Quinn's like, oh yeah. And so and I'm really excited to hear what Quinn has to say here in a minute. But that's one of the things is you take what is given to you, you adapt to it. You don't see it as a stop or a challenge. You see it as a way to be like, as an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity for me to communicate with my audience in a totally different way. And I'm also now getting instant feedback. I think there was a second part to that question, but I got really excited about the chat.
Yeah, the second part of it, and you know what? You're so right, because when I do these, I do 2 of them a week where I have up to 200 or 300, 400 people on them. And I had to stop doing a specific thing because it kind of backfired on me. I would put in, so everybody key in, don't hit enter yet. Rob and I both have certifications as virtual presenters and hosts. And one of the things they taught us was to do a chat waterfall where everybody keys it in and they hit enter on the same, like 3, 2, 1, enter. And when the first time I did that, it went so fast I couldn't see a single name. 300 of them went by like it was just going off the screen. So I had to change what I was doing. You have to adapt with this. But the second part of that question, Rob, was how did the pandemic affect your vision of where you're going? Is virtual going to be a part of what you're doing because that footprint now just expanded your market to literally the entire planet? Is that going to affect how much of that is going to stay in what you do?
I think it's going to stick around. I know it's going to drop off. It's already dropping off, which is fine with me. I love doing live events, but I think so many people within that year got used to it. And now we know how to use Zoom. We know how to log on to Zoom. We know, it's like, am I muted? Am I muted? Like, Rob, you're on mute. You're on mute, right? And so, but I love being able to adapt to that. And I think it's going to be here for a while. I think now people realize, oh, for this quarterly event, we could, if we're going to be getting together with our top 30 sellers, we don't need to bring everybody. We don't have to fly everybody in. We don't have to have all these expenses. We can do a virtual event. And virtual events are now done better, right? We can see the possibilities of doing a great virtual event. I did an event with Dell a couple of months ago. And with Dell, they had people in India, China, the United States, Ireland. They were all over the world, and they were able to do this virtual event where they normally do it in person, and they're spending all this money, right? And I think some of my venues, like the Salt Palace, if they're on here, they're like, we need that money, right? And I think we need those events. We need Salt Lake Comic-Con. Why am I forgetting what's the name of it? Anyway, FanX. We need FanX. Like, you can't do FanX properly virtually, but you can do some of these smaller meetings and some of these regional conferences virtually. And so I think that's going to stick around. And so I still believe I have a market for this. And even just doing like, hey, Rob, we're just doing our get-together online. Can you come in and do a game show? And here's the other thing is a lot of people are now used to creating these home offices, and people aren't going back to the office. And so we've evolved in a way. And I think it's actually for the better. I think it's a better environmentally. And now people are now with their families, and they're now being able to work from home. And so there's trade-offs, but I think it's here to stay. But virtual won't go away, but live events are coming back, which I love. And here's the other thing is hybrid events. If you are doing a hybrid event where you are doing live and virtual, so this will expand your reach to other people. So I think about this in events, right? If you're doing an event, why not do a hybrid? Why not send out a virtual link? Because you are now going to expand your brand, and then people will be like, oh, I didn't get to make it this year. I'm going to go next year. Or now you're making revenue, and maybe you'll break even, but now you're exposing yourself to more and more people, right? And so that's another way to go about it as well.
Yeah, and I've actually seen some of these big events that are having people that they can't get to the event actually present through the technology at the event. So they're actually presenting on the big screen from New Zealand just so they can be a part of it. So Rob, thank you so much for spending time. What one piece of advice would you have for this group that are just getting ready to get their business ramped back up? What do you think is the most important piece of advice you could give them?
Well, the one most important piece of advice is lean on a network. Find your tribe, find your community. I think if you do it alone, then it's going to be really hard. Find a mentor, find somebody who's doing what you want to do, right? I always tell people that. And one of those people for me was Jason Hewlett. And Jason and I have become great friends and great collaborators. Jason is now fully invested in the keynoting world, whereas he used to be purely an MC. Now he's giving those gigs to me, right? But we as collaborators and friends, we're constantly working together. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to be that first person on the dance floor. And this is a mantra that I use. Be the first one on the dance floor. If you see somebody else on the dance floor who's already doing what you want to do, step out onto that dance floor and join that person. Be that second person to jump out there, because you need to be one of those innovators, right? There's what is called the Law Diffusion of Innovation. It's this bell curve here. And right here on this side is our innovators. These are the people who are getting things started. Maybe you're not an innovator, but be an early adopter. I was an early adopter when it came to virtual. I wasn't an innovator. I don't want to say that, but I would say I'm an early adopter. And because I leaned all into it, I was able to jump right in and keep going with that curve. So be the first one on the dance floor, find a network, find a mentor, dive in.
Rob, thank you so much for spending that time with us today. I super, super appreciate it. And I know you're a busy guy, but thank you so much for spending that little bit of time and giving us your impact. And
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. Let's go ahead. And before we bring Quinn on, I want to go through a couple more fun case studies about businesses that did some very, very unique things. This is a company called Cotopaxi. They're an outdoor, exercise and outdoor camping, hiking, and apparel company. And it's kind of interesting because they do something similar to what we do when it comes to promoting themselves. They don't do a whole ton of advertising, let's say, for the sake of that word advertising, but they do events. They have this event that's called the Questival, and it's a 24-hour challenge that they do where teams can sign up and compete as many challenges they can get done in a 24-hour period. And the teams get a pick from dozens of challenges like swing on a rope, swing, float in the Great Salt Lake. They can go eat Aggie ice cream, but they do this as a team. And the thing that's really interesting about this strategy is your personal relationship with Cotopaxi changes when you have another person involved in it. When you bring somebody else in to that circle, your brand loyalty goes up. And you think about it, when you're at lunch, and if you're an Apple person and you start talking about Apple and you find another Apple person, your loyalty to Apple actually goes up because you found another like person. Well, last year, they had to shut down this whole event a couple weeks before the Questival took off, and they pivoted super quickly and called it the Questival Quarantine, which was a really clever branding move. They still wanted to do it, but they wanted to do it virtually. And so their team got together and started this Questival Quarantine adventure in place because people couldn't really get out and do all these things they wanted to do because they were literally locked in their homes. And so they expanded it to a 72-hour instead of just a 24-hour event. And then they held it in separate cities. Utah's event was combined with all cities all over the world. And the first way they started to see the impact happening is when families that lived in different parts of the world started becoming a team. So they would start putting teams together from coworkers or clients that were all over the country, all over the world, and they would do these events virtually. They would have to go through and get their thing virtually. This thing took off in the social media like crazy. They started sharing it and getting teams together, teams that had never heard about it because usually this happened within the boundaries of Utah, really. So they started doing things, and they were all different kinds of things. They did different things than going to Aggie ice cream, for instance. They wouldn't do something like that, but they would get on a rope swing or stack something on your head and get a picture of it and put it on social media. Trying to engage their product as much as they could to get this social media buzz up, but trying to get people, they were individuals doing this quarantine together virtually. So they weren't actually getting together to do the event. They each did it, and they would collect it and put it together to submit it. The thing that was really cool that they did with this is they did a fundraiser alongside of it. They raised $18,000 during this Questival that they did, the Questival Quarantine, where they did everything. It's kind of a hard thing to say, but they did this all together. They raised $18,000 that they donated to help refugees that were facing COVID-19 issues. And this, again, is another really smart thing that brings clients together. By doing this fundraising thing, it engaged more people to get involved with it. It put a really bright, positive spotlight on their products, on their brand, and it cultivated relationships that went far beyond the boundaries of Utah. And obviously, having their products sold online, their store became endless. Their reach became endless, increasing their market share without a boundary. Okay, so things like that are a smart idea. And then what they decided to do is they're going to continue with this Questival Quarantine, but it's just going to be the Questival Virtual, where teams can do this from anywhere. They figured this out during COVID. They worked out all the bugs when they had to, kind of at a rush, and now they'll enhance it. Every year it'll get a little bit better, and they'll immediately expand their market share. Those boundaries will reach across the entire planet. Super smart move. Now, let me talk a little bit about our company. So we are a communication agency. We're based here in Utah, as I said, and we are a people company. Our people are our product, okay? And you hear a lot of companies will come out and say, our people are what will make us great. But in an advertising agency, that is actually incredibly true. Well, when this pandemic hit us, every year we have a bug that will get in the door and it'll wipe out an entire department. You'll hear somebody coughing down in our underground where our creative people live, in the basement of that building you can see, and you'll hear someone coughing, and within a week it'll be empty. People will all be sick. And so we try so hard to say, if you're sick, don't come in. If you're sick, don't come in. But they're so passionate about what they do, and they need to get things done. And so they'll end up coming in, and then we'll have everybody vent out. Well, this year we shut down like everybody shut down. And so we sent everybody home. And it was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to be able to pivot quickly, be able to keep our clients engaged, keep their messages moving? What are some things that we can do to make this really elegant? Now, part of what we did is we leveraged systems that we already have in place. We leveraged tools like Basecamp or Slack or whatever communication and project management tools you have. We leverage this to the hilt. Now, we leverage it already, making sure that our project managers and our products are moving in a project flow that we put together. But this tool became critical when people started working remotely, because it was like they were in the office, because the communication was happening in a system that they were actually used to. So that communication did not fall off. Now, when we didn't have cell phones and we didn't have computers and we couldn't do this, when you weren't in the office, you were gone. You were just off. You were offline. You were completely off planet if you weren't in the office. And it's a stigma that some of the older people like myself have a real hard time getting used to, that people don't need to physically be in the office to be impactful. And it's so amazing to see so many of our people that were literally able. We have some that still, over a year, have not been in the office once. And they haven't dropped a ball one time. They're in their seat. They're at their home. They situated it how they needed to. They got what they needed to do be able to do this elegantly. Okay. And it wasn't like this major expense. One of the things that we found that was important is that we needed to help them do it better, especially if they were talking to clients, like most of them were. Most of our account managers and our project managers had to interface with clients. So we extended an offer for them to be able to get a headset. So we gave them 3 options and said, go ahead and pick one of these options, and our human resource team got them these headsets so that they could actually sound good and not echo and not bounce, and have it be a really productive time. One of the other things that we did, it's interesting, we talked a little bit about this last time, but we had just spent a year producing professional development workshops, and we were going to release this with a public seminar the 2 weeks before COVID hit. It was 2 weeks after COVID hit, and we had rented the Miller studio, the big auditorium down there, and we were ready to go. We had everything in place, and this hit, and it just wiped it out. So we had to cancel it. Well, one of the other things that we had a few companies that were saying, we want you to do this. Well, they're obviously going to cancel, right? One of the other issues that we had is one of our clients, we work on the Zero Fatalities campaign. And I know most of you know what that is, because the brand awareness for Zero Fatalities is in the high 90 percentile. Well, one of the tools that we use in that is we do what's called a parent night, where we present for an hour 5 traffic safety behaviors that will help people protect themselves from being in a crash. Well, when the pandemic hit, school stopped. All of that stopped. So there was no live presentations of that. Well, this was what forced us to pivot super quickly. And in the basement of our building, we have a safe. It was a credit union. And so upstairs and downstairs is a cement room. It's a 1.5 foot of cement room, and all 4 corners of it. And we put a sound stage in there. Well, we took that sound stage and turned it into a virtual studio. didn't take us a lot to do. It already had all the sound stuff in it, and we shot photography in it several times. But we built a TV cart multimedia stage that we could do virtual presentations from, even if we had to use green screen technology. This is me presenting one of the workshops on presenting from that virtual location. Now, we also found that maybe this is something we could offer, not just for what we were doing when it came to those virtual presentations. We delivered 3 different virtual presentations to the Air Force Base from this room. We also found that this is something that our clients might engage with. So we offered to our clients, if they need to do a virtual presentation anywhere, instead of sitting in their office with the light behind them because there are windows there and they're using the camera off of their laptop, we could use this studio to make their presentation super professional. And we have clients that are actually doing that. And it became a product that we now can offer. We've been doing these parent nights twice a week for a year and a half. And we have anywhere from, there's 2 people per household. We have anywhere from 150 to 400 people that are watching these virtual broadcasts. Also, when we pivoted our staff meetings, obviously we couldn't meet, so we turned our staff meetings into these virtual meetings. And you can see a couple of these people actually have those headsets on, and they're kind of like pilots. They really like them. They sound really good. Their microphone works really good. It helps them a lot when they've got other noises in their home or things like that they can remain really professional. But one of the things that we tried that was just, we had to try it, is we tried to do a social event on a Friday evening, 4 o'clock. Everybody go get their favorite drink and bring it into a Zoom meeting, a Zoom room, and we'll just chat. We do this at the office and we do it during staff meetings, and we hang out and talk and joke around, hear about people's lives and their dogs and their kids and their families. And they are great. Everybody really enjoys them. But when we tried it virtually, everybody came in the room, they got their drinks, you had a little bit of the chit chat at the beginning of it, and then everybody would just sit there and stare at it. It's like being on a massive elevator with 50 people. They're all just kind of staring at the wall. And it didn't last very long, just because it was like, okay, this is really weird for me. I don't know how to do this. But the point is, we tried. We tried to do something unique to take advantage of what's going on and stay engaged as a staff. Try to stay engaged as a staff. We're going to talk about motivating your staff and your team a little bit later. Another element that was hard for us to lose is we used to do this barbecue during the summer. Okay, we would get. I was the guy that would be mostly on the grill, and I enjoyed doing that. I love barbecuing, but I was making burgers for an hour before this thing would start, and we'd go out and people would bring potluck. Well, just before the pandemic, we tried this a couple times. We brought in a food truck so people didn't have to bring food. Well, when the pandemic hit, the concept of germs got amplified. And so now we found it's easier on all of us if we just have a food truck come to our parking lot and we just enjoy an afternoon out in the yard of our shop and have this food truck there. Everybody really enjoys it. Takes a little bit longer because the food's a little bit, it's a little bit better because it's coming off of this specifically set up food truck that has food handling permits and everything. So we found that that's something that we're going to take forward. We're going to continue to do this starting this summer. We're going to have these and trying to create programs that can engage our employees, engage our team, where they feel the love of the company, that they can get together and they can talk. And this is something moving forward that you need to pivot to quickly. Pivot to quickly, finding ways to re-engage with your team. Now, we know we had some CDC guidelines and the governor's coming out with new guidelines on how we handle wearing masks. As people get vaccinated, this is going to be maybe a slow transition, but it wouldn't hurt for you. Remember, we talked about pivoting quickly. It might not be a bad idea for you to sit down and create a plan. What's a handful of things that you could do to get ready for when this starts to transition? Are you going to have a mask party where you're going to throw some food, bring in a food truck, go someplace, have an outdoor thing where you can bring your whole staff in and say, hey, thank you for being on the ball with this, and we're through this, and we got a lot of vaccine people, and we're on our way out of this, and start to bond that relationship again, because those relationships are super important. So what I want to do now is I want to bring in my next guest. My next guest is Quinn Deetline. He's from Health Center Theater. And Quinn, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but I want to share with this group kind of what I told you, my experience with Health Center Theater. So my wife and I did theater in high school. It's not like we're pros, right? I mean, I was Luther Billis in South Pacific, and I killed it. I did kill it. I had a ship painted on my stomach. It was great. But my wife and I love theater. My wife performed at Lagoon on a stage, sang and danced like crazy. She was great. And so one year, I was looking for the perfect Christmas gift, and I had already got her seat covered. So I had to figure something else out, right? Husbands, guys, you know how bad we are at this. And so I thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is a good idea. So I went down and I bought season tickets to Health Center Theater. Huge success. I was like the guy. I mean, she was so happy. And I was happy. And we went down and we absolutely enjoyed it. Totally, thoroughly enjoyed it, right? But then the next Christmas, I don't know how this happened, but they renewed. My season tickets renewed. And my season tickets have renewed every year since then. I can't tell you how many years now, but I finally figured out how to turn it into a gift, Quinn. I wrapped a magnet in a great big box that has all the shows on it. I wrapped that and give it to her because I got to count it towards my gift count, because she ended up giving it to herself. So this is something that I know for us has been huge. It's a big part of our family, and we absolutely love it. So Quinn, I want to invite you to introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about what you do, and we'll run through a handful of questions with you.
Okay. Well, happy to be here. It's exhausting, I think, and I'm sure that most can understand or relate with this idea that you see an hour and a half long Zoom call and you wonder if you can possibly put the time aside for something like that again. But I feel like I've been fed today. I'm impressed with Mike and his excellence and preparedness and all those good things, and it's hard to compete with Rob in terms of a showman. He is the what was it, that show with the Wolverine, the Greatest Showman. He is the Greatest Showman, and it's fun to watch him. And the disco ball feels perfectly in place. And for the rest of us, we'd be wondering, what illicit drug did you find in Bangladesh, to Mike's point, to make something like that work. But just really quickly, for those who are still hanging on here, I'm curious, what type of, if you'll just type the name of your business and what type of business you are. I'm curious to see which of us are still on this conversation and that kind of a thing. And I know Mike's running the show here, but I'm just curious to see what types of businesses are out there. So I am fortunate to work at Health Center Theater. I love the arts. It fills my soul. I worked with Flying J, which was a great gig for about 5 years in the middle after finishing my education, and that was valuable for so many reasons. But I grew up around the theater. I actually, for those of you who have been around even longer than Mike, I actually slept with my family. We lived there in the South Salt Lake Theater before West Valley. We lived there for close to a year, and we watched MASH every night and had root beer floats. And we in the green room after the actors would leave, we pulled the couch out from behind the mattress and slept there, and then put the mattress back in the middle of the day and brought the actors in, and 37 years later, I'm sitting here on my couch, Squire and Company. It's a tax firm. That reminds me, I'm so grateful for our extra month that we have. State government, there's nothing more exciting. And marketing, we can use all of your help. Anyway, this is my family. This continues to be the most important thing to me. I saw a question come up on Facebook the other day. What would you if you were dying, what would you have wanted to do more of? And for me, that's spend time with my family. And one would think that the pandemic would have given us an excuse to spend more time with our family. And I think at the beginning it was fun and it was exciting. And a lot of these things that Cotopaxi were doing and some other groups were doing, we did some of the same things. It was enjoyable. It was this fun, brave kind of new world. And I was spending more time with my family, and we worked on our family rock band that Rob referenced and all sorts of different things like that. But I want to say 4 months into the pandemic, had to kind of start bootstrapping a lot of different things to try and figure out beyond just a quick flash of everyone hop online and do something social. We had to start looking at things a little bit differently. And as Mike, as you fire away with questions and different things like that, please understand that my answers are just some views from me personally. Some of the things that we did at the theater, some of the things that Rob did and that you have done and that other wonderful organizations have done, weren't necessarily appropriate for what we were doing. But we're sneaking out of this thing. In 2019 we had 570,000 patrons who came to the theater, and in 2020 we had a third of that. We lost $8 million just in ticket revenue alone. And so obviously we've had our challenges, just like everybody has had their challenges, and it's fun to see us all emerging, coming out of this great hibernative cave, and scratching our chests and looking out and maybe taking off our mask here and there, or keeping it on, and walking out into this brave new world again. So anyway.
So Quinn, let me ask you a couple. We're going to run out of time, but let me ask you a couple questions. First of all, what did you adapt, and what will you keep as you move forward? Did you do anything that you ended up doing that you think is a great idea that you're going to keep?
So there were some forced adaptations, actually. So I don't know if you call those adaptations or just triage. We had come out of a big growth moment, moving from our previous location to this location, and in doing so, I think we probably, just to handle a new build and two theater spaces instead of one, we had to grow our manpower in a big way. And then as COVID hit and toilet paper starts disappearing from the shelves and whatnot, then we had to start looking more specifically at our manpower, how that works. And honest, we were able to keep most of our people down. We probably dropped 20%. We're at about 178 full-time employees now. But at the same time, we were one of the only performing arts organizations in the world, and that sounds like a super audacious statement, but it's true. There was some stuff in South Korea and a couple others that actually stayed open the whole time, all the way to the point that when Disney is shutting its doors completely, you recognize that the art and entertainment world has an issue. Some of the good things, however, is we have been able to hire on some specialists who did unbelievable things. I don't even know if I can talk about their creative efforts at Disney for privacy reasons. But we were able to hire on in the mix of some of this stuff, some of this incredible talent. So that will be with us moving forward. Audition practices, for those of you who have had the chance to come and see Les Mis at the theater, Les Miserables at the theater going on right now, that entire show was cast virtually. There are all sorts of reasons why that has been a benefit, and I don't think that's anything that we ever would have even dared try before this type of a thing. And there are several things, but that's an obvious one in the casting and hiring process.
That's great. Oh, I'll be there Friday, by the way. I've got that lined up. That's part of our deal. Just real quickly, before we go with you, what piece of advice could you give this group as they're getting ready to move forward with their business?
I listened to a speaker just the other day, Anthony Robles. He was a national champion wrestler. In the NCAA, and he won with only one leg. He's amazing. If you look him up, he's got a movie coming out, and he said something that has resonated with me, and that is, he said, "Don't let your obstacles become your excuses." And all of us have had so many stinking obstacles during this time. And in the performing arts world, the initial response was throw everything online, find the rights, put the stuff online. People will pay money for that. And with exceptions, in terms of a larger performing arts facility, this idea did not garner much monetary success. Maybe there was some brand awareness and some different things that played along with that. We are fortunate to live in a state, Utah, where the government did everything it could, with the exception of about 4 months, where even if we weren't entirely shut down, we could be open at 25%. And we stayed open at 25%. And Mike came to some of these shows and looked around and said, good heavens, how are these people doing this? Like, where is the energy and all these different things? But in that process, in the grind, while we were one of 5 theater companies, honestly, in the entire world to still be open, we were able to pick up a show called Les Miserables, because for the first time in 30 years, it had stopped performing. And the owner of the actual place reached out, and we got that opportunity. And it cost us grundles of money to stay open. But we have kept this connection with our people. We have a show that is the highest selling show that we've ever seen. Thanks, Lindsay. You're sweet. It matters a lot. The good words. And we can move forward, and our people have trust that even though this was challenging and there are all these different things, that we will do whatever we can to keep them going and keep them employed. And I feel like we can crawl out of this cave maybe faster than other organizations that have to start the whole thing again. So what I would say is, and this is the most boring advice, but embrace the grind. And sometimes innovation is just keeping your nose down and doing what you do well and continuing to do it. And that's it.
That's great advice, Quinn. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking some time with us today.
Pleasure, Mike. Thanks.
And I'm a huge fan. I know everybody in Utah is a huge fan of Hill Center Theater.
I recognize that tune.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there Friday. We'll be there. Gotta love that. Gotta love that. Okay, really quickly, we've only got 15 minutes, and I want to give you some ammo. I'm going to give you some ammo, and we're going to haul through this because I've got an hour of information that you're going to get really fast, but I think I can wrap this up really quick. Okay. First of all, let's talk about marketing and advertising, what you can do with this. Number 1, exposure. Make sure people know who you are. Do what you can to get out there. Figure out what your customers drink and be offering drinks there. Okay. So identify who your audience is. Segment them off if you can, and then try to get there if you can. You guys remember Cavalia, the horse show, right? That thing, they took every billboard in the whole valley. Well, they had money, they didn't have time. And so if you've got time and you don't have money, try to put that time and the resources you have in the right place to make sure that you're where you need to be, okay? And second here on this one, offer your products online if you possibly can. Even if it's a service that you do, get something online that they can interact with, something that they can feel like there's a hook there. In the days when just having a brochure website, those are gone. Right now, people use the website like their yellow pages, like when they're finding something. In fact, during this pandemic time, it got to the point that this is how they buy food. You just buy food online. And it's just amazing to be sitting with a group of people now and have them say, do you want to go grab lunch? And they go, yeah, let's just have them bring it in. And that's changed dramatically because they've made it really convenient to do. Number 3, make sure your website is current. Make sure that you have new information on it. If you have a blog and you look at your last blog and it's a year old, no one's ever going to go there. In fact, the search engine is going to start demoting you. Okay, so make sure that you've got fresh content on your website. If you just built it and you stuck it out in space, don't plan on it doing anything, okay? Because the search engines aren't going to give it any credibility anyway. Try to get something on your website that keeps it current, something that people can say is new, something that can be attractive, something especially that if they can engage and do a transaction with you online, all the better, okay? Talk about social media for just a second. In the social media, share more video. Video is a big deal. And I've got some research on this, and they said that a study showed that a video ad got 186 clicks, while a static ad got 32. That's 480% higher. Now, it doesn't need to be crazy. You don't need to hire a film crew. Put together some fun videos. Make sure if you're using your staff that you get a talent release from them, that they give you permission to use their likeliness on the video. But if it's just you can do it. If you're shooting about your business, about your products, put together fun little videos and get them on your website. You can do that by either loading them directly to your website and host them in wherever you're hosting, or put them on YouTube and link to your YouTube channel. They have tutorials on how to put a YouTube channel together, super easy. But start putting videos together. People are very forgiving with videos, but they really like to watch them. So share as much video as you can. In fact, I'm going to show you an example of a company here. This is Blatant Construction. They now go out and they do project updates. They film everyday work and they put them out there on segments on their LinkedIn. They have behind the look scenes and project updates and anything they're doing that's really cool. They talk about their clients and their subs and their vendors and their community partners. And these videos are kind of a big deal because it builds a lot of pride with their team. Their team gets really excited when they see these videos online, okay? And then offer your products and services virtually. Get out and try to do something that people can leverage what you offer in a virtual world. Diet things went to Noom. Noom took their home fitness, went online. I looked at what Apple released in competing with the Peloton. I have a Peloton. Apple released this entire fitness thing, and it was like, what? They got into this space hardcore. There's more and more and more of that. Watch for some of these emerging things and see what you can do to get in that space. You don't have to pioneer it, but you can watch other people that are being successful in these environments and these venues and jump in with them. I mean, gyms pivoted super fast. They are now making fitness because people started exercising at home. They're starting to make fitness classes that you can do on your own equipment at home because they've got to pivot into this space. And you're going to see a lot of companies that are going to say, hey, this is more economical for me to just stay in this space. And so they will stay there. You know, IHC, other services that are available, you saw doctors going online where you can actually go connect through urgent care through an app. This is going to become more and more common in our world as we continue to grow. Trying to get into a doctor is going to be out. Where there's so many diseases that are transferred that way, they're going to want to do these things virtually until they need to have you come in. You know, and here was a really interesting one. One of our team members at our office found a company in New Zealand. The National Aquarium in New Zealand had a paid private Zoom session where a zookeeper took them into the penguins' habitat, and they were able to go around with a one-on-one environment and meet these penguins in New Zealand from here. So think outside the box. Some of the things that you could do are right around the corner, and they're probably closer than you think. You just need to think outside the box a little bit. And remember what Rob said, try it. There's no reason you can't try it, okay? Now, here's another one that was really interesting we're talking about is reassessing your audience, okay? Your audience could change, and you've got to know where they are. Review their comments and their messages in social media. More people are engaging in social media than ever before because of what happened with this pandemic. So get in there. Make sure that you're a part of their lives, that you're communicating back to them, that they're not communicating to a blank wall, that you're engaged in your social media so that they can feel the love, that you're actually communicating with them. me give you an example of a couple things that people did here on this one. Extra space storage studies their audience very carefully. And the pros at CEO, they know what they're doing. And so they know that women ages 25 to 45 is their key demographic. These are the people that get these storage units. Well, you can see on the right there, they turned it into more of an Instagram environment. They wanted it to look a little bit more like it was a social media thing instead of a promotional thing, okay? And they've grown their roots out of their roots here in Utah into a nationwide company because they're watching and paying attention to who their customers are and what they want. And that is important that they pivot quickly into those so they can take advantage of those clients. Now let's talk a little bit about networking and relationships. First of all, take a deep breath and get out there, okay? Set a time every week to build your network. Put a couple hours on a Monday or a Wednesday morning, whatever, and put 3 people on a list that you're going to reach out and just connect with. And I want to be really careful about this, that you understand what I mean. I'm not talking sell something. I'm talking cultivate a relationship. You don't always have to sell something, because I promise you the difference between a friend and a friender is a big deal. You don't want to be perceived as someone that's only their friend to get their business, okay? You need to be genuine about this. And if you can't get it in your head that you're just trying to build a friend relationship, because people like buying from their friends, you have to get that in your head. If you approach every relationship you have that you're going to turn them into a client, you're not going to have very many friends, because people can sense that, okay? So be thinking about building these relationships genuinely. Reach out to 3 people. And if it's just to say hi, send them an email, make a phone call, just send out something, say, hey, I just wanted to touch base and say, hey, see how things are going. And then take some notes on that. Try to cultivate relationships that are genuine, and those genuine relationships will turn into business long-term, okay? And it's kind of funny how that happens, because I was at a New Year's Eve party with my brother-in-law, and he had a friend over, just a friend. I didn't even know what he did. Well, we sat down, and I said to him, this is my leading question. What do you do? And he told me that he trains companies on banking software. He trains all these companies that have their credit card system, that's a banking control system, how to use their software. Well, after a few minutes, he had to ask me, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I make multimedia presentations that people use in training things. Oh my gosh, kind of like what you do. We would build a whole training thing for you. They were a client for over 25 years. So that's how these happen. You just need to make sure that you do them on a genuine level so you don't turn into a friender, because then it's not very good. Okay, they can sniff that out. Second thing, pivot into new options and future relationships. Do what you can. Look outside the box. What are some similar companies or product offerings that you could align your product with that might make sense? Okay, what are some things that you could do that you could lean on each other in that time when you need to right now? Bring in lunch with your team. Brainstorm some ideas of how you could expand your options, how you could expand your relationships with aligned companies that would support your product or services, or audiences, new audiences that you haven't even thought of. Hey, that lunch is going to pay for itself in gold, and let them go all over the place. There's no boundaries. Let them come up with ideas of what can they do to grow your business, and have fun with that. It may be something you'll do all the time. The other thing that you can do is you can go out and join a think tank, get on LinkedIn, start looking for people in the community that are meeting, even if they're meeting virtually, but they're meeting once in a while, and talk about ideas, bounce things off people. Find some people that you can actually bounce some of your ideas off. That'd be really good. A good way to keep that momentum moving. And then number 3, don't save yourself out of business. We talked a little bit about this. Be smart about your resources. Think about that Harman's case study. They put those resources in a very tight spread. That spray didn't go all over the place. It was in a very, very tight geographic boundary, and it was highly impactful. Think about how much bang for the buck you're going to get. You're trying to do the entire population, a dollar's not going to go very far. If you're going to be talking to one person, that dollar might be able to buy you a fizz, and you can have that communication, okay? So think about how you're going to get that dollar to work. And remember this graphic. We showed you this last time. It takes only 18% of the resources companies are spending on their customer retention. Reach out to your existing customers. Make sure that your relationship's tight. They're spending 44% of their resources on trying to get new clients. It costs 5 times. It costs 5 times more to go get a new clients than it does just to keep the ones you have. So keep your relationships with the existing customers you have. Now, motivating your team, super important. Nearly half of all the adults in America reported that they were experiencing symptoms of anxiety or depression during this. That includes your people. So spend some time to get your relationship with them enhanced. Understand how they feel. Talk to them about it. Make sure that you are working with them and addressing the feelings and the emotions that they're experiencing. Here's some ideas that you can do. Number 1, show support and genuine appreciation. Just walk around and say, hey, thank you. I know you're working so hard. I want you to know I appreciate it. One company did some research where they put together thank you cards, and the initial comment from the card was canned. It's like, your continued dedication and hard work makes children and families in the region better off every day. And then the second part of the note was a personal note that you reference something about them personally. That is a super powerful tool for people to say, wow, they actually were thinking about me. Now, you have to remember, don't make this fake. Don't go print these and then just sign them, or even print your signature on it. That becomes really disingenuous, and it could actually backfire on you. So be super careful about doing that. And then another option that I think is an important one right now, encourage your people to take time off. Encourage them. There's been so much burnout. Give them an opportunity and encourage them to take a vacation. Say, you need to get out of here. Go do something fun. Go be with your friends. You can prevent burnout if you can get them to take some time. We made a change where we combined vacation and sick time into personal time. We found that people wouldn't take it. Even if they were sick, they were coming in. So we're telling managers now to make sure if someone is sick, they need to take that personal time. It kind of backfired because they wouldn't take a sick day because they didn't want to spend one of their personal days. Trust me, if they bring an illness into your company, it's going to take a toll, okay? And, Utah has all kinds. If you go to visitutah.com, they've got itineraries all over the place for you to go out and really, really have fun in Utah, okay? And then plan for future and set expectations. Set some kind of rewards. I want to show you what one of the reward things that our agency does. So this is part of what we do, so it's something that our people really love. This is a poster for an Evel Knievel movie, okay? And you can see the captions up on top and down below. Well, what we do for our teams on their 5, 10, and 15-year anniversary, we make them a poster. Well, Brent Wilhite is our business development director, and this guy is a motorcycle fiend, right? So we took this Evel Knievel poster, all about Evel Knievel, and we made it about Brent. If you read across the top of it, it's meet the man, the myth, the legend. He's all about business, makes everybody his business. Well, this is Brent's 15-year poster. This is his 5 and 10-year poster. And then what we do is we mount them on a great big frame, and people sign the black mat around the frame, and they keep these in their offices, and they take them home, and they really, really love these. This is something just to keep the morale up and let them know that we love them. And we try to honor those anniversaries so that they know how important it is for us. This is a weird time in your business. I know that. Coming out of this pandemic is going to be weird. You need to get back to the things that you know were successful, but don't miss what you learned. Try to get into some of the things that you learned and leverage some new opportunities to grow your business and expand your business, leveraging what you learned. If not, it was all kind of a waste. So do what you can to think about how you can leverage what you learned over the last year and a half as we come out of this pandemic. Marie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mike. That was fantastic. Some really good takeaways and really applicable examples. Thank you to Rob and Quinn. I can confirm that Rob is an excellent Zoom party host, and also that Hale Center Theater is a gem. If you have not been there, please go. We are so fortunate in Utah, and I think a lot of people don't realize how fantastic Hale Center Theater is. So thank you, Rob. Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Mike, for sharing your information. We are going to have our next professional development meeting on June 1st. We're going to have Chris Hayes from Impact Utah talk to us about change management, working with resistance. And I think we all have experience with that. It's going to be a good session, so watch for that invite coming soon. Again, thank you, Mike, and thank you everyone for attending. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thanks, everybody.